Junkerqueen is the most aggressive tank in Overwatch 2. Junkerqueen was recently buffed in Overwatch. These buffs included granting her extra HP when someone affected by bleed is eliminated, and giving her knife more damage over time, but reducing the initial damage. However, the biggest buff she received was to her Carnage ability, which now gets a shorter cooldown the more people you hit. These buffs definitely don't make her meta, but do help enforce her hyper-aggressive playstyle. In this video, we'll talk more about how to play her, along with how to get maximum value out of her abilities. First though, let's give a rundown of all of her abilities and what they do. Junkerqueen's primary weapon is her scattergun. This is a pretty typical shotgun type weapon that does really high up close damage with a short fall off range of 15 meters. The spread is more controlled than weapons like Reaper though, making it still efficient at more medium ranges. If you connect with all of the pellets, it will do 80 damage to the target. However, this does not account for headshot damage, which will definitely have a huge impact on your overall DPS. Overall, she does about 100 damage per second when landing all shots with her gun, which has a total of 6 shots. Junkerqueen's right click is her Jagged Blade. This ability throws a projectile in an arc which can be recalled when right clicking again. If the knife sticks into an enemy when thrown, it will do 50 damage on impact and cause a bleed effect of 30 damage over 3 seconds, along with pulling the enemy towards you when recalled. This also gives your normal melee a bleed effect when the knife is not thrown. With a cooldown of 6 seconds, this is something you can throw out pretty consistently. It can be difficult to land with how fast people move in Overwatch, but it's very effective when you do land it directly. You can use it to pull people close to you for more damage from your shotgun, or to use Junkerqueen's next ability, Carnage. Carnage swings a giant axe in front of you, causing 90 damage and inflicting a 40 damage wound over 3 seconds. This comes on a cooldown of 8 seconds, however, for every enemy hit by Carnage, it reduces the cooldown by 2 seconds. Essentially, as long as you're hitting one person with Carnage, it will almost always have a cooldown of 6 seconds. However, the snowball potential of hitting more than one person is insane. For example, if you hit 2 people, Carnage will have a cooldown of 4 seconds. This allows you to have a very high amount of Carnage uses in every single fight, which keeps your passive active much more frequently. Speaking of Junkerqueen's passive, it's called Adrenaline Rush. This passive essentially gives Junkerqueen lifesteal when using abilities that inflict bleed damage. When applying bleed to an enemy, Junkerqueen will heal 125% of the damage over time. For example, if you hit one person with Carnage, you will gain 50 HP over the course of the effect. When someone with a bleed effect dies, Junkerqueen will heal the remaining HP that she would have gained from the bleed effect instantly. This passive gives her much more sustainability, which also incentivizes playing aggressive and getting as many bleed effects going as possible. Junkerqueen's last ability is her Commanding Shout. This is an AoE effect that gives Junkerqueen 200 HP and nearby allies 50 HP. This also grants a 30% move speed buff to everyone affected. The HP will go away after 5 seconds for Junkerqueen and 3 seconds for allies. With a cooldown of 14 seconds, this ability is usually only able to be used once per fight, so make sure to make the most out of it when you decide to use it. Lastly, Junkerqueen's ultimate, Rampage. When using this ultimate, Junkerqueen charges forward, causing bleed damage and applying an anti-heal to anyone in the area of effect. It does 100 bleed damage over 4.5 seconds, which may not seem like much, but the anti-healing effect means this is basically guaranteed damage. You will also heal for 125 for each person hit over those 4.5 seconds. This is a great ultimate that allows you to engage and quickly close distance on enemy supports and DPS. Now that you have a good understanding of Junkerqueen's kit, let's talk about how to get the most value out of her with positioning and cooldown usage. Junkerqueen has extremely limited range, meaning she struggles against high poke damage comps. If you are not playing with a Lucio, it's best to try and use your shout to close distance so you can be hyper aggressive with your Carnage usage. You can also do a little bit of slow poking with her shotgun and knife while trying to land a knife to force someone out of position so you can get a free kill. If this fails, it's imperative that you close distance as soon as possible. Having a man advantage when playing Junkerqueen is great because it lets you play a bit more passively, as typically the enemy will be scared to push when down a member. One of the most important things to keep in mind is how you have to play very tight on corners. This lets you jiggle peek using your shotgun along with using your axe to cleave around corners and go for big damage. Junkerqueen's damage against tanks isn't very good, so it is usually best to aim for squishies, especially with your carnage. Doing 90 damage to a tank isn't very impactful, but doing 90 damage to a squishy, along with applying bleed to them, can provide a ton of value. Typically, supports will be forced to heal the squishies when you land carnage, which will help your team burn down the enemy tank. Shout usage is very important, as it allows you to go more aggressive along with granting a speed boost, which can also help you escape faster or close distance on people quicker. Try and think of your shout as a Zarya bubble for yourself. 200 HP may seem like a lot, but the fact that it decays sometimes makes it seem more impactful than it actually is. Most of the time, your shout should be used to escape after going aggressive and looking for a high value carnage. If you land the carnage and think you can snowball and get a couple kills, then you can use your shout aggressively and keep fighting. Just try to keep in mind where your supports are playing, as maintaining LOS and making sure they stay alive is much more important than searching for kills. Junkerqueen inherently requires a lot of resources to function well as a tank, so peeling for your supports is very important. Now that you understand the fundamentals of playing Junkerqueen, let's talk about how she matches up against the rest of the roster. Let's start from the top and just go down the list. I won't talk about every single hero, more just the ones I think are most important. Brig is extremely easy to punish now as Junkerqueen, seeing as she needs to be close to proc her healing, and Carnage will just go right through Brig's shield. Cassidy can play distance decently well, but wants to play in a medium range to get max value. He can be very easy to speed onto with Shout or with Lucio, making him a pretty easy kill most of the time, and his wider hitbox for a squishy makes it pretty easy to land the knife on him. D.Va is another character that needs to be very close to do a lot of damage, and Carnage is a great cleave tool for when she's using Defense Matrix. She's also very easy to get a lot of headshot damage onto because of her central head hitbox. Ball and Monkey are both very similar matchups to Queen because of her jagged blade. Throwing this into a Monkey or a Ball as they engage is very strong, as you can wait for when they look to leave and pull them back in. In Monkey's case, this can completely deny his leap, making him almost a free kill if you do this properly. I won't talk too much about characters in the neutral category, just avoid Ana's nade and sleep as much as you can, and don't use Carnage on a Doom when he's blocking. This will give him an instant charge punch. Let's talk about the harder category now. Ashe is very strong against Junkerqueen because she has consistent poke damage, and Dynamite is a great tool against you as it will usually force you to play slow and wait for the effect to end. Orisa is good against every single tank in the game at the moment, so your best option is to just ignore her as much as possible. Hold your shout for after she uses her cooldowns, and then try and go aggressive onto her backline. Bastion's turret form can shred Junkerqueen because of her limited mobility, so you just have to hide when he's using it. He can be a very easy kill after the cooldown is over. The rest of the characters in this category are all just very good at poking and forcing you out, similar to Ashe. Avoid taking damage from them as much as possible. Getting your shout forced too early in a fight is a near guaranteed way to lose. Finally, the hardest tier. Let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room in Kiriko. It's almost impossible to actually close distance on her and do anything because of her teleport, but the main reason she's so strong against Junkerqueen is her Suzu. Suzu cleanses all negative effects from anybody in the AoE, meaning it directly counters Junkerqueen's entire ultimate along with all of her bleed effects. The only way to get value out of your ultimate when playing into a Kiriko is to apply heavy pressure onto someone else and force it before you use the ultimate. Roadhog might be Junkerqueen's hardest matchup when it comes to tanks. Him being able to hook you into his team along with dealing 250 damage to you in the process will either get you killed or force your shout every single time. His healing also allows him to sustain through nearly every single thing you try to do. Zenyatta and Mercy are both very similar in the way they affect Junkerqueen, that being the extra damage they provide to their teammates. Zenyatta is a pretty easy kill once you close the distance, but Mercy is someone you'll almost never be able to touch. Try and focus down whoever she's pocketing so she has no valuable damage boost targets. Sojourn is just extremely broken right now, and because of your lack of damage mitigation and mobility, she just farms her railgun off of you. Closing distance is also extremely hard, as she'll just slide away from you and continue to pressure you the entire time. To beat Sojourn, you will either need a Lucio on your team to help close distance, or you will have to position yourself near perfectly. That's gonna do it when it comes to playing Junkerqueen, guys. Hopefully you understand her a bit better now. If Roadhog and Orisa receive nerfs soon, I could see her being a very, very strong tank to play. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. All my socials will be down in the description, so if you want to ask any questions, I'll be most likely to respond on places like Twitter. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.